this is Miss Tina from the Downtown Reno Library. Washoe County Library welcomes you to our virtual reception with the Truckee Meadow Quilters. For many years, the Truckee Meadow Quilters have displayed a quilt exhibit at the Downtown Reno Library as part of Artown. Due to COVID-19, for 2021, this exhibit has been converted to our online gallery. To view this exhibit, go to our website, washoecountylibrary.us, and under the Events tab, select Virtual Galleries. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to our quilter panelists. We have Doris Metcalf, Karen Cumberland, Cindy Scott, and Darby Watson. Welcome, everyone. Doris is going to share a little bit about Truckee Meadows Quilters organization.
Okay, well, the Truckee Meadow Quilters has actually been around for 43 years in Reno and Sparks. We currently have over 140 members. And part of our goal, and it's on our website, is promoting quilting and the related arts in the Northern Nevada community. We always welcome new members. It doesn't matter what level of quilting expertise they are at. We have 2 meetings a month, a morning meeting the second Friday of every month and at 10 a.m. and an evening meeting the fourth Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. And both meetings are held at the Sparks United Methodist Church on Pyramid Way. We are having a quilt show this year. We usually try to have one every year. Of course, we didn't get to have one last year, but we are having one this year. It's on September 17th and 18th at the Convention Center in downtown Reno. Our Quilt Guild is very community minded, and they are very generous with making and donating quilts to various charities. We also have an opportunity quilt every year that we raise money for a charity that we select for the year. So we work all year raising money, and at the end of the year, we give it to that selected charity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doris. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to learn about the quilts you have exhibited and also your process and more. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and start with Karen Cumberland. And I go ahead and bring up your quilt here. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Cumberland, and I have been quilting for about 30 years. I've been sewing since I was a little girl, and have gotten more seriously into quilting as time has gone by. The quilt you're looking at right now is called Basket Full of Posies, and it was designed by a dear friend of mine in Big Bear, California. She designed it as an opportunity quilt, and as soon as I saw it, I was lucky enough for her to share the pattern with me, and it was really a joy to make, and knowing who had designed it. The outer border and the larger inner border are all paper pieced, and all the flowers are all hand appliqued. And I'm really happy with the results.
It's beautiful. I do have a quick question.
Sure.
What does an opportunity quilt mean?
It's a quilt that a quilt guild will make, and then they will sell tickets for you to win a quilt at the end of usually it's given away at a quilt show.
Okay, wonderful. So why do you enjoy quilting?
I love the challenge of it, and it's always changing with different patterns and different fabrics and all the different techniques that are involved. And I just love making things. And so this is the one thing that has really held my interest for a very long time.
About what size is the quilt that you have in the exhibit?
It's about 60 by 80.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you give any of your quilts away?
I give away almost all of my quilts that I make. There's no way that I could keep all of the ones that I make, and it's really a joy to be able to share my quilts with other people.
Well, hearing that you say that you give them all away because there's no way you could keep them all, that's making me more curious about how many quilts you have made.
That's a good question. I tried to figure it out the other day, and I can't even remember all the quilts I've made. I'm constantly have at least one in the works, and sometimes more than one.
Wow. And about how long did it take you to create this quilt that's in the exhibit?
This one took me quite a while because of all the handwork that's involved. I would say probably a month, and I know it took me about 4 days to actually do the quilting on it.
Okay. So do you use a combination of hand, I know you mentioned hand stitching the flowers on there, but do
Yes.
you also use a sewing machine or a quilting machine?
I use a sewing machine for the paper piecing and any other kind of piecing. And I have a long arm machine, which can accommodate a large quilt, and I use that to do the actual quilting.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So when you have used these quilts as gifts or for special occasions, I mean, who do you give them out to? Is it just, mostly kind of random families or your own family members or friends and things?
Uh, First is family members, of course. I think every single family member has received at least one. My daughter is a grand winner. She has received several of my quilts, probably about 8. But yes, I do them for friends. I also do them for charity, for donations, or occasionally I'll see someone that I think just needs a quilt and I'll give it to them, even if I've just met them.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Do you have any quilters in your family besides yourself?
No, I don't. My mother,
Oh,
in her later years, took some classes, but never really finished more than just a little tiny wall hanging and quilting. Her interests were in so many other directions that, but she loved and enjoyed quilts as I do.
that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Next, we're going to speak with Cindy Scott. And Cindy, I'm hoping that I can pull up your quilt here, but the thingamajig is telling me I can't. So we'll do our best. Here we go. I did it, Cindy.
Yay, thank you.
So please tell us a little
Okay.
bit about yourself, Cindy, and how long you've been quilting.
My name again is Cindy Scott. I've been quilting probably over 25 years. I started sewing young, as Karen said, learned on a machine in junior high and just picked it up easily, loved sewing, made a lot of my own clothes. But then I kind of put it away for years when my kids were growing up. But once they were older and I found out about making charity quilts for children. And that's my favorite thing is making children's quilts. So I have actually kept track since the early 2000s about how many quilts I've made and given away, and it's at least over 600.
Wow.
I'm a
Wow.
little fanatical about it. I really enjoy working with fabric and colors and patterns, and I just love the whole process of it.
Wonderful.
So
Tell us about your quilt here.
this one here, I actually saw this pattern at a quilt show. I had never done circles before. You know, most quilts are done, at least the piecing is done in squares and rectangles and triangles. And I thought I would try something different. And I bought the pattern at the quilt show along with the templates to make the half circles and quarter circles, and just put all the different colors together because I love a lot of color, and used fabrics from my stash, and that's how it turned out. I was happy with it.
It's very beautiful. Now, you said that you mostly do more like geometrical with it, with lines and such. Is it actually more difficult to do quilt work with circles?
Yes, because I do all machine stitching, and you have to be real careful because it's on a bias and make sure, you know, it doesn't stretch funny. And but these circles, the quarter circles go together pretty easily. I found out once I tried doing it. So I've done a few other quilts with circles in them, but
Okay, so when
this
you
was
see
one of my favorites.
when you see the quarter circles, I'm looking at it, so it's like there's a square,
Right,
and that square is cut into 4 pieces, and in each piece is a quarter of the circle, correct?
correct. The template is
Okay.
actually a quarter circle. So I make each quarter circle separately along with the outer part of the, you know, the square around the circle.
I see.
So
Wow. It's amazing. So amazing. So you mentioned before that you got this pattern from a quilting show that you were at, correct?
yes, I saw a completed quilt at the show, and I was awed by it. I really, it was struck me. So I bought the pattern and I bought the templates to be able to cut out the quarter circles. So that's how I made it.
And where do you get your other patterns?
I buy a few patterns. A lot of times I get ideas online. I can just go and look at quilts and I can figure out the pattern myself. Or I subscribe to a couple of magazines. I get pattern ideas from the magazines. And also from our quilt guild. Every time we have a meeting, we do show and tell, and I get to see the other ladies' quilts and I get ideas from that too. So I think my favorite thing is designing my own patterns though. Sometimes I'll buy a fabric that'll just strike me at a fabric shop. It'll say, buy me, and I'll take it home and figure out what I want to do with it and make up my own pattern to fit that fabric.
Fantastic. That was actually going to be my next question, but aesthetically, I'm kind of curious about your ideas. So I know you have patterns, but what are other things that inspire
Inspirations.
your pattern making?
Boy, like I said, seeing other patterns give me ideas. A lot of times I'll kind of do my own take on a pattern and not really follow it, but just get inspired by it. Like this going in circles quilt, this isn't exactly how the quilt was supposed to look. It's kind of my interpretation of it. I'll put colors in different places or put the squares in different places just to make it a little more my own.
It's really amazing. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Next, we have Darby Watson. Hey, Darby.
Hi,
How are you today?
great.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and pull your quilt up on the screen here just in a moment. And you can tell us a little bit about yourself and the quilt that you have in the exhibit.
My name is Darby Watson. What you're seeing on the screen is a Dear Jane quilt. I've been quilting about 24 years. Essentially, I started kids left home and I had extra time. So the Dear Jane quilt is based on a pattern by Jane Stickle, who created it in 1854 during the Civil War. Each block is different. Each triangle is different. They're 5-inch squares. It was a combination of hand piecing, machine piecing, and paper piecing. It has scallops on the edge. The quilt is about 88 by 88. It's very heavy because of all the applique on it. But Jane Sickle created all the patterns. She hand pieced the whole thing and hand quilted it, which was quite a feat for being such a large quilt. One of the reasons I love the quilt so much is I get bored if I just have one pattern. And this has many patterns in it. I was actually a much better quilter after I finished this quilt. It took about 1.5 years to finish.
That's amazing. I do have a question. I'm not even a novice or beginner quilter. All I know what to do is look at them when they're in the library, or cover myself up with one if I'm cold. Um, could you explain, you mentioned 3 types of piecing.
Okay.
I don't quite understand what that is. It was paper piecing.
Paper piecing is where you take a pattern and it's printed on paper and you sew it in reverse. So you actually stitch along the line of the paper where the seam is, you fold it over, then do the next seam and fold it over. And then when you're done and you have a 5-inch square, you tear the paper off and you have a 5-inch square that's perfectly pieced. One of the advantages of paper piecing is you get perfect points because you're actually sewing on a line.
Okay.
Hand piecing. I don't like sewing circles or ovals on my machine. I do much better at it if I do it by hand. So that's just taking a needle and thread and turning the edges over and sewing the pieces down. And then the third way is machine piecing, where you take one square and stitch the next square next to it, the next square next to it. Those are the 3 types.
So in looking at the quilt, which parts are each type of piecing?
I would say the majority of them are paper pieced. If you look at the second row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a like a star and little melons in the corners. That would be hand out. Just because it's easier for me to do those by hand applique rather than by machine.
You also mentioned that applique is very heavy. What makes it?
The quilt is heavy.
Okay.
Applique in it because essentially you have the base fabric on top, and then you're adding fabrics on top of that, and then you've got batting and you've got an end. And because there's so much applique in it, it just weighs the quilt down.
Okay. Does that make the quilt any warmer?
Yes. You have multiple layers.
Yes. So what are your reasons for quilt making?
I love patterns, any kind of pattern. I'm fascinated by them. So I'm mostly a traditional quilter. I'm not like Cindy, where I like to make up my own patterns. I've done so on occasion, but mostly I like following patterns. And it's like a giant puzzle, putting the pieces together. It's the math part of me that I like. And then I like the sense of accomplishment when I get it done. I get a large satisfaction from that. And then I'm a long arm quilter. So I also enjoy quilting it and seeing how each square is separately quilted in a different manner.
How many quilts have you made?
I've probably made over 100. Like Cindy and like Karen, I give a lot of my quilts away. My family has. I think they're tired of getting quilts from me. Need to start on charity quilts. But last year for Christmas, I made 12 Christmas quilts and gave them to all my family members because I have a large, call it a stash. That's our fabric collection. I have a large stash of Christmas fabrics. And that was fun, just making different kinds of Christmas quilts. But most of mine use patterns.
Do you have any quilters in your family?
My great-great-grandmother in Illinois was a quilter. I have 2 quilts that she made. It's made out of silk and it's stuffed with wool and it's all hand quilted. It's gorgeous. The other was an applique quilt that was entered into a county fair that she won first place in. It was just beautiful. but none of my immediate family. I don't know why I enjoy it so much, but it keeps my interest. And because there are so many different kind of pattern, I never get bored.
Mm. Is it, I find that interesting that your grandmother made one out of silk. Is that common? Because it seems more like a slippery sort of fabric to work
It is,
with.
maybe it's not silk. Yeah, it was possibly sateen, but it is very slippery. It's
Mm.
very warm because it's stuffed with wool, probably about an inch of wool.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having us.
All right. And then we're going to go right back to Doris. All right, Doris, you're on.
Okay. My name is Doris Metcalf, and I have been quilting for about 34 years. And it's actually, it was when my first grandchild was coming. And I got 5 grandkids in 8 years, so I was making a lot of quilts. But this quilt was very special to me, this Baltimore Christmas, because for a couple years, I quilted with a friend in Sparks. We had a group that we did hand sewing. We either hand quilted, appliqued, or something. And she was working on the hand applique of this quilt. And she had all the center squares done. They were not put together. She just had them all done. And then she died very suddenly. And I just could not stand the fact that that quilt would not be put together. So I asked her husband for it. And so I put the center together, and then I hand appliqued the outside border. And it took me probably 3 months. I did it during the winter time. But the center squares are all hand appliqued by my friend. And there's some very small pieces. It's very meticulous. There's embroidery, sequins, beads. It's just amazing what she did. And it's dimensional also. Some of the things are like folded, and some of the little flowers just are dimensional.
It's beautiful. My question as I look at this quilt, it kind of reminds me, and maybe it was just the partridge with the pear tree, like this is kind of telling that story or that Christmas song, like the first day or the second day. So is there kind of like a traditional story behind this Baltimore Christmas quilt?
And this is the 12 days of Christmas. I
Oh,
should have
okay.
mentioned that. Yeah, it is the 12 days of Christmas.
So where do we start? Which one's number one? Just the stocking? Or the reindeer?
Whatever the first day was, I can't remember. There is a partridge in the pear tree there on the
first
second
day
one
of-
down on the right.
Right. And then there's like little gingerbreads and the reindeer. I don't know if I know this song, Doris, very well. I think I've forgotten
Yeah,
the Christmas song.
Yeah, me too.
So Doris, how long have you been, or you said you've been quilting for 34 years?
Yes.
Correct?
Yep. Yes.
Do you have any other quilters or in your family, or aspiring young quilters even?
Actually, see, none of my ancestors is my mother, my grandmothers, but I'm lucky in that I have 2 sisters and 2 daughters, and actually a couple of my granddaughters have quilted. But both my daughters and my one sister and I, we get together and quilt a couple times a year. But yeah, we're all quilters.
That's wonderful. And
Yeah.
I know we've been looking at a lot of the blankets, you know, like more tapestry-like quilting. But you can quilt other things that are like more utilitarian or wearable. Have you done any like quilting that's like wearables? I think I've seen like a quilted bag or like a jacket.
I made one jacket and that cured me, but I have made a few vests. But it's not my love. I mean, they're nice, and you know, they've kind of gone out of style to wear. So, but I still have them in the closet.
Well, Doris, if you
But
want to share something, I'll bring it back. I'll bring the quilting garments back in style if you like.
Okay. But I do make a lot of placemats because I use placemats at my table, and there's lots of patterns for placemats and table runners, and a lot of holiday decor.
And this is
Santa
obviously
Claus.
a holiday piece here. So what kind of holiday decor?
Well, I made Christmas stockings for like the whole family. I make wall hangings, table runners, just things to hang on the wall during the holidays.
Beautiful. So what are your feelings about quilt making compared with other crafting activities?
Well, I've pretty well tried it all through the years. And because I did a lot of handwork, I did a lot of embroidery, cross stitch, all that. But once I got quilting just stuck with me. I started quilting and everything else just kind of got set aside, and that was 34 years ago, and I just keep going. Quilting is always changing. There's always new fabric and new techniques. And I have an embroidery machine, so now they have quilts you can make on your embroidery machine. So there's always something new and different.
That's fantastic. What are your favorite quilt patterns?
Well, I'm kind of a traditional quilt maker. I don't have Cindy's imagination. There's no way I can look at a piece of fabric and figure out what I should do with it. But I love traditional patterns, and my dream was always to make a double wedding ring, because that was supposed to be one of the most difficult ones, and that's kind of a historic pattern. And I finally found a way to do it with a newer technique and newer rulers, and I have since made two. But I love the traditional patterns, and if you look at the quilts that are anywhere from 100 to 200 years old, that's what inspires me. I love those old patterns, and they have new techniques to make them. So, and quilt patterns also were created by what was ever happening in our country. I mean, the pioneers, wartime. I'm trying to think of some of the pattern names, like the Road to Oklahoma. You know, it was a sign of the times. That's where the names of the patterns came from. And of course, there's also the stories of the Underground Railroad. Some people say that never happened. Some say it did. I don't know.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Doris, for helping. We still have a little bit of time, and I have some more spontaneous questions to ask, and anyone can answer at any time. So, where would you suggest a beginner start quilting?
I would tell them to go to a quilt store and take classes, or even if you come to the Quilt Guild. I've learned a lot by going to quilt guilds, because the ladies are always showing their quilts, and they share their knowledge, and we do have classes too. So the best thing to do for them would be to take a class somewhere.
Okay. Doris, and I believe it was, I hope I have this right, either Karen or Darby, were talking more about how they were traditionalists when it came to like patterns and things. And I have so many questions about the Jane quilts. Like I want to know more about the story to understand the pattern. And even Doris, you mentioned the double ring. Is that correct?
Double wedding ring.
Double wedding ring. Where would we be able to, or where would you suggest is a good place to go to get more of that historical background on quilting, patterns and such?
Well, the internet's a great place to go. And I mean, you can go, the National Quilt Museum has a website. You can go on their website and look at quilts.
Actually, the library has some good quilt books too.
Thanks, Darby.
There you go.
Shout out to the library. I'm getting nervous now because I'm trying to think like, oh no, what's the call number for that? So embarrassing. Definitely, we do have a lot of resources in our catalog that support quilting and crafting and such. So for sure, that's a great treasure to the community. Anyone else?
I was going to say quilting magazines also. There's several magazines that have quilt patterns in, and for beginners, you know, how to basics from beginning to end, how to make a quilt in each issue. I'm thinking of a magazine called Quilt Maker or E. McCall's Quilting. There's several of them out there that would help a beginner.
I know of another place too, is Missouri Star. It's a website and it's a quilt store in Missouri. Yeah, Missouri Star. Anyway, and her patterns are all I think they're very simple. Mm-hmm. So her website would be a good place to go.
Excellent.
One thing that helped me was I used to watch the program Quilt in a Day, and her patterns are also very simple and easy to follow. And she does a lot of pictures in her pattern books and stuff. So that was a huge help for me. And that's one of the places that I started.
Excellent. Oh, I got a message that popped up. 746.46 is the call number for quilting. Thank you. I knew it was in the 700s somewhere. That's amazing. So all of you mentioned about how you have a plethora of fabric. So where do you get your fabric from?
Quilt stores.
Yep.
Quilt stores.
Quilt stores. We have 3 really nice quilt stores in town. There's also a general quilt store or general fabric store that we go to. I bought a lot of my fabric from an estate sale where she had collected just wonderful fabrics and bought a lot through her.
Well, I buy a lot online sometimes if I can't find what I want locally. We try and support our local quilt stores, but I do buy some online if I'm looking for something specific or I run out of a piece of fabric.
And your quilt shows are a great source of finding new patterns and fabric.
So the quilt show that's coming up here soon, Doris, is that put on by Truckee Meadows Quilters?
Yes, it is. It is. And we usually have, I think, Darby, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple hundred quilts that we hang.
Yes, and we have quilt vendors there too. There's also another organization that has a quilt show in Reno every year. It's usually in June. It's held at one of the convention rooms. And they always have a lot of fabric vendors too, and pattern vendors too.
Okay, so I do have, I'm a little bit, I like to go out on the edges of things. So have you ever used a material that would be not really considered traditional when it comes to quilting, like automatically was thinking like, ooh, I could quilt with some corduroy. Is that a big no-no?
No,
One of the new things that you can quilt is I've made a purse out of cork.
Mhm.
Really?
It's fabric that's got a cork veneer on it, and it looks fabulous as a purse. I probably wouldn't make a quilt out of it, but it's good for bags and purses and utility items.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So do you,
I've used T-shirts on people's clothing and pictures that I print out on my printer.
oh, wow.
I make a
Just
lot of,
regular pictures
Yeah, you
on
can.
like regular photograph paper?
Yeah, no, you actually print it out onto a white fabric, white cotton fabric.
Okay.
Yeah, you put it right through your printer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, a lot of my quilts that I make for children, because I make a lot of donation quilts for children, the backing, I use flannel or even fleece, because I like them to be used, more like a blanket rather than just something to look at. So I want them soft on the back. So I use a lot of fleece and flannel in the back. And the fronts, yes, I've made t-shirt quilts for people before. They have a collection of t-shirts, and you cut out whatever pattern was on them, put them into squares, and make a quilt out of it. It's kind of a memory quilt. So using stretchy knit t-shirts, though, you have to be careful because you have to put a backing on it that won't stretch. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you can use other fabrics besides just cotton.
Is there a website that you would like to share for Truckee Meadows Quilters so we can get a little bit more information and where the meetings are and such?
Yes, we do. We do have a website. It's tmquilters.com, and we have a calendar that lists all of our events, all of our meetings. And then there's a section that's for members only that they have to have a password to get into. But the membership form is on the public page, and email. I get a lot of email off the website, which is surprising.
I'm actually curious, and I think this is a piece that Cindy has in the exhibit because Cindy's got more of your aesthetic of trying new things is a little bit more experimental. You do have a piece in there that looks like paper, like you made paper with it.
Oh, is that the marbled fabric one? Or is
Yeah,
it?
that's the one.
Yes, I actually did take a class at the Nevada Museum of Art for fabric marbling, where you kind of put the paint onto water that's got chemicals on it, and then rake through it and make different patterns, swirls and zigzags and that kind of stuff. And then you lay your cotton fabric on top of the paint just for a second, lift it up, and the paint sticks to the fabric. So I made all these fabrics at that class, and then I brought the fabrics home and designed a quilt to use the fabrics. I don't know if you're able to show that one. It is in the gallery.
I'm gonna give it a try actually, because it's
Okay.
amazing here.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I took that with another buddy from my quilt group, and the artist who taught it is actually from Italy. He lives in Garnerville now. And yes, that's the one. So this was a lot of fun. I actually made all that fabric taking the class. And then
It's
brought
just
it home and
amazing.
cut it up and made it into a wall hanging. So I have that hanging in my sewing room.
Beautiful. It's so modern at the same time too, with the black boxes. It kind of reminds me of it feels like stained glass, but not quite. I know
Yeah.
there's another piece. I'm not sure if you did as well that looks like stained glass. It's amazing.
Oh, the
In
very
the
first one, the
exhibit.
fire and ice one. Yes,
Yeah.
that's one where I found the fabric at Sierra Sewing, fell in love with the fabric. It's my favorite color. And I cut that up and created the pattern to fit the fabric. So that was fun too.
Wonderful. And then I just want to share a little bit more since we have a little bit more time, a few more of the quilts. My favorites, can I do that? Am I allowed?
Yes.
You're allowed.
All right, the next one is, I just am so drawn to it. So beautiful. Darby, the Dresden, I believe it's the Desert Dresden
Yes.
is amazing. Could you tell us a little bit more about this quilt?
Sure, this is a pattern by Laundry Basket Quilts, Adidas Star. It uses a new technique that it actually has a folded, little white folded triangle in between a Dresden or the petals that go up from the burst with little points. And then
Oh, I see it. Okay.
the little white points are actually a 3D effect. They're you sew them in and they're three-dimensional. And that's why I liked it. But I also like the applique that's on it. It just reminds me of the Nevada desert.
It looks like there are, it's, if you're not paying close attention, it's just kind of like flowers, 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 but there's the little tiny bluebirds.
Yeah, there are.
Oh, they're so precious. I just love it. Okay, we still have a little bit more time. I'm going to go to more of my favorites. Or actually, I want to highlight Doris's. This one is really cool because it reminds me of the season that we're currently in here. It's just so playful and fun. That says summer. And it looks like the little pinwheels on there are three-dimensional, like they're popping off of there. Is that correct, Doris?
I just thought this was a happy quilt, and this is actually done on the embroidery machine. There's some hand sewn, like the flower is dimensional, but most of it is done on the embroidery machine. There's a few piece squares, but yeah, I just think it's a happy quilt, and I think this is one called Hello Sunshine.
Yes. How long did it take you to make this quilt?
I don't know. I think I was on a mission when I started making this one. I think I did it in a couple weeks because I was just having fun with it, and because it's not like I sewed all day long, you know, but off and on. Yeah, it was only a couple of weeks. It was fun. And the pineapples are a different technique where you make lines of stitches and then you cut in between. So pineapple has a 3D effect to it.
It's beautiful and very summery and fun. Definitely the Hello Sunshine Happiness quilt. Very cool. All right.
Okay, this one is all hand applique, and it's actually the first quilt I ever did using the technique of hand applique. And as I was working on it, and it took me months and months because each square is done by hand, and I wasn't working on it exclusively. As I was working on it, it reminded me of the picture that I printed out of my grandmother standing in her rose garden. She always had beautiful, beautiful flowers. And so I added her picture in the one corner and added more red flowers in the other corner. And I dedicated it to her. It's Grandma Clara's garden.
That is so beautiful. And you'd mentioned it before about printing the photographs on the fabric there. This is a really great example of that. I just want to thank you all very so much for participating and really making this reception possible. And a big shout out to Debbie as well. She did an amazing job getting all of the photographs and information in so that we could put it up in our online gallery. Doris, if you could tell us again when the next quilt show is.
September, let's see, I wrote it down, 17th, 18th. Look at my sheet here. Yeah, 17th and 18th. It's on a Friday and Saturday at the convention center, and it'll open at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then it goes till 5 o'clock on Friday and 4 o'clock on Saturday, I believe. And we have vendors lined up, and we will also, one thing that's kind of fun is we have a bed turning, and that's an old thing that the Amish do it, where they have a whole bunch of quilts on a bed and they turn them back one at a time. So we get antique quilts and do that. So yeah, it'll be fun.
And do you know what the tradition is behind that? I've never heard of that before.
I've been in an Amish quilt shop before, actually, and I think they just do that because out of convenience, because they have all those quilts and it's easier to pile them on top of each other and peel them back. And it's really kind of neat to watch because you get a person on each side and they slowly peel them back and fold them, so you get to see one quilt after another. So,
Oh, that's amazing. I think I'm probably going to go to that quilt show.
Okay.
I hope you do.
I think I might even attempt making a quilt square at some point in the near future.
Well, Cindy,
You
you'll
are
have to
so,
if you need help.
Yeah.
oh, thank you. You're all so wonderful and creative and inspiring. Your work is just amazing. And there's so many more quilts in this exhibit that will astound you. I wish I could have had all of the artists on this panel so that we could ask questions and get to know more background about the quilts. But maybe that's something that we can entertain in the in the future, not too far in the future, a little near future. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping us in this project. And I'm really hoping that this is something that we will do again, as I said, in the future, the near future. So I guess this is where we bid farewell. Did you have any questions for me?
No, I just want to thank you for doing this. And
Of course.
us to share about Truckee Meadows Quilters.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. It's been fun.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Doris. Thank you, Darby, Karen, and our backup dancer, Giles. Thank you for tech support. And take care, and hopefully well, for sure, I'll see you in September.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.